As has been many times the case already, our first encounters with zombies in the world seem to be through the colonial enterprise, and especially through the early travelers up to the Americas. Now we have especially the focus on the zombie in the Caribbean from a writer, and unlike the others, this one is not a scientist as much as he is a um, I could say erotic writer of some sort. This particular book right here was published anonymously at first. And usually the books are written in the first person, which tells us, tells us a pretty complicated story, really, because we do not know exactly how much of the stories are actually biographical or maybe fictionalized versions of themselves, but one way or another. This particular story tells us here of the Countess of Cocagne, who is spending time in the Caribbean, and she comes home very out of her spirits. Then the Marcus, the her husband, has a bad day too. So she, the Countess, offers to make a show really to become a zombie to frighten the Marcus and kind of surprise him. So she hides under the bed to kiss him by surprise, and um, this I guess would have scared the Marcus, I suppose. I'm not exactly sure what this couple's story is, but somewhere or another, this is the first time that we hear about zombies in modern literature in 1862. There's no explanation of what this zombie is. Later, they mention again this is a kind of a pale spirit of some sort, but there is not much information past this. Um, Another reference to this is from Louis-Élie Moreau de Saint-Méry. He, on the other end, was a scientist of some sort, a ambassador to France in the Caribbean, in Saint-Domingue, which is Haiti, modern day. He also tells us of a spirit, and here, as you can see, because you speak French, I'm assuming, the person is there's a person who is afflicted with the disease, quote unquote, of being a zombie. I highlighted the footnote here that says Creole word meaning spirit or revenant, which would be well, the literal meaning of revenant is coming back. So it's something that is coming back from the dead, also usually a word for ghost in French. This is another pale character. So the person who has seen the zombie is Afro-Caribbean, so black, and they see the zombie and turn pale as a result. So this is a pale zombie seeing a pale person. Interesting story is here coming out of France. By the way, this is because the colonial power in this area is French, and so therefore most of the combinations that we have about those early zombies are French, and that's just how it is. A little bit later, we have a story here of the zombie, or the living dead corpses, which a sorcerer has extracted from their tombs and raised by a process which no one really knows. It is thought that the sorcerer passes to and fro beneath the nose of the corpse a bottle containing its soul, obtained with the connivance of the corpse washer. Now we have some nice technical term here. We have a corpse washer, we have a stool, we have a magical bottle. However, nobody really knows, as we are told here, how the zombie works. This is from a book called Voodoo in Haiti, published in 1972, so much, much later than anything else we have talked about so far. And obviously, there's a gap here between the early experiences of French colonial history and those, well, sometimes scientific, sometimes fantasy tales, and yet. Well, this represents kind of the story of how we got to the world where we are now talking about zombies, because while the idea of the zombie existed for a while, it was kind of lost in translation for a good minute. More interestingly, even it used to be concerned really with what was happening in Haiti and not much elsewhere until in the 20th century, anthropologists making their way through Africa noticed something somewhat similar. Here for Melville Herskowitz, a world Yahweh itself, it was seen and will be noticed again when religious terminology is discussed that is merely a synonym for the world voodoo deity. Furthermore, in probing the possible existence of secret societies in Dahomey, that is modern-day Mali, the no indications could be obtained from the priests, initiates, or laity that there was anything but autonomy within each of the various cult groups, and for the possibility had to be taken into account that the Yahweh Society, as described for Togoland, might perhaps be a super organization comprising initiates of all cult groups. So Hershkovitz meets a cult in Africa that he terms Vodou according to the local language, Vodun, with an N at the end. But at this time, there is not much of a connection with what is happening in Haiti, and definitely here because it is under the larger context of Yahweh tells us that there's a larger system, which Herskovitz is also having issues understanding. There seems to be a connection with a neighboring ethnic group, but not much of a clear understanding of what this Yahweh voodoo thing is doing. Meanwhile, in another French-speaking place, also in the context of Africa, now we are in Cameroon. We have French anthropologists traveling in Africa that is somewhat speaking French, and we hear of a somewhat similar story that is partly French, but also partly including other characters that we have seen before. So Dosni is a Jesuit priest that is working in Cameroon and meets with the local religious practitioners um, who are also in the role of doctors. Essentially, they are the people that are able to help others physically and also spiritually. I shall give the Low's own words as he sought to explain in French and with powerful word images the technique of the Ekong sorcerers. They pick your name, you are going to die. The ones who kill you purchase something that resembles you perfectly. They copy your shape, they build a sort of big doll. It's a perfect picture of you. It's there on the bed and everybody's crying. But you're over there, you see everything. You've put something over your mouth and you can't talk. You're like a dog that's obedient and its master who's killed it. And the family is going to bury the perfect copy and think it buried you. And after the burial, the Ekong practitioners come with their amulets. They exhume you, take you out of the earth, and carry off your form with all the winding cloths. The coffin will be empty. They take you to the one who bought you. They reconstitute you. And from that moment, you work for him as a slave hand. Now, a lot of these are motifs that would be pretty commonly known today as part of what we understand as voodoo. Number one, the dolls, voodoo dolls, are typically associated with this. Although this is a much bigger question, but there's not much evidence that voodoo dolls are practically voodoo practice. And there's also the carrying the coffin, burying the people, and kind of being separate from the body that is being buried and the soul that is kind of hovering outside of the world. But again, this is happening in Cameroon, not in Haiti. And even though we would typically associate this with what is happening in another part of the world that is also French speaking, this is quite clearly not the same. but it is also kind of the same. Victor Turner, an important person in the story of anthropology, also did research in Africa, and he tells us that there is a strange ritual that exists in Africa that also connects with the dead in another part of Africa now, not in Cameroon, not in Mali. Clearly, his death is no more than a metaphor for a radical change in his mode of manifestation. Such a metaphor is perfectly consistent with the Indian Vendembu ritual belief. Boys and girls are said to quote unquote die during initiation, but this merely means that they pass symbolically from childhood to adulthood. Furthermore, for Ndembu, physical death does not mean extinction. It means the passage from a visible to an invisible mode of existence. As we have seen, ancestor spirits interfere with in the most lively way in the affairs of their living kin. There is also a vague and imprecise belief in reincarnation, or rather, in the return of certain of the physical and mental attributes of dead persons to descendants named after them. Indeed, Ndembu believe that it is exceedingly difficult to prevent the return of the spirits of the dead to their former associates and haunts, and these returns are usually accompanied by misfortune to the living. So again, separate practice, but similar, using the same idea of a physical death, using the same idea of a ritual that allows people to cross from one state to the other, also the soul, also life and death, also the spirits. Yet this is not a zombie or voodoo for the most part. Another example, once more in French, in the imaginary of the Mitsogo people, independently of the esoteric mention of the roles of various parts of the human body, secondary parts, according to, depending on whichever initiate we are talking to, the MoMA man is constituted of many fundamental parts. First, the Oto, the body, then the Njanga, the vital strength that is in your heart, the Gedi, which is a part of your spirit, the Gedi Nadida, that is your figure, your shadow, the dead man, the cadaver is Nem Njumbi. Ooh, Njumbi. That's an interesting connection here. So we have Njumbi, we have here Ndembu, and we have also the Nzombi that exists in other places. One last part in Nigeria. We've talked about Nigeria before in the context of this class with the TIV and Laura Bohannon, who is visiting people in Nigeria, and she's trying to explain Shakespeare to them. She explains Shakespeare and Hamlet, especially, and the presence of Hamlet as Hamlet's father as a ghost. What is a ghost? An omen? No, a ghost is someone who is dead, who walks around and can talk, and people can hear him and see him, but not touch him. They objected, no one can touch zombies. No, no, and it was not a dead body the witches had animated to sacrifice and eat. No one made Hamlet's dead father walk. He did it himself. Dead men can't walk, protested my audience, and one man that was quite willing to compromise. A ghost is the dead man's shadow, but again they objected. Dead men cast no shadows. So the Nigerian TIFF people bring up the idea of a zombie to Laura Bohannon and to try to make sense out of what a ghost is in the Western culture. But this is obviously different. We know that zombies are not quite ghosts. We know that they have a body. We know that they can walk, and we also know that dead men can't walk. So how do you explain this? How do you connect the ideas that exist in many parts of Africa about the soul and the body being separate, and also the body and the dead body being two separate things, but yet also those things apparently not being connected? This is a very good question, a very good question indeed. Part of it is solved by this person right here, Clairvius Narcisse, pictured to the right here in Harvard Magazine. Raised from the grave led ethnobiologist Wade Davis to probe the secrets of Haiti's living dead. Clairvius Narcisse admitted himself to a hospital in Haiti in 1962. This is a hospital that is operated at this point by Europeans and Americans. He was feverish. He was fatigued. He was spitting blood. The doctors could not find any decent explanation of what happened to him. And 3 days later, he died, according to the American hospital. So they buried the man, not sure what had happened to him. 18 years later, a man who claims to be this man right here shows up in this village talking to a woman, and supposed to be his sister, her sister, his no her. Wait, I'm losing my pronouns here. Okay, so this man shows up to a woman claiming to be her brother. That's right, claiming to be her brother, and this person cannot believe it because her brother, according to her, has died 18 years ago in an American hospital. But, well, apparently he was in fact alive. Now, how do you deal with this? And especially, how do you deal with this with the American science that has deemed him dead and that would have to, 18 years later, deem him alive? Well, that's going to be the conversation tomorrow.